Welcome to Lessons from the Mountains. Stories of my time of hiking and climbing the mountains of New England. Stories that taught me a great deal about myself and the spiritual life, and stories which I hope will help you in your own spiritual journey. Today's story would be entitled Scared, and it has to do with Mount Katahdin, the highest point in Maine, at 5,269 feet, if you care about such things. Katahdin is also, you might know, the end of the Appalachian Trail. The climb, we went up the Cathedral Trail. And as you can see from this picture provided to me by Stavros Basis, he was gracious enough to allow me to share it with you, you would think I would remember this climb because a chunk of it looked like this, a lot of scrambling up over rocks. If you look at it carefully, though, you realize it's not actually as bad as it looks. And we had done enough of this that maybe the reason I don't remember it is I didn't find it particularly difficult. But we get to the top, and the sign and all that kind of wonderful stuff. And as a matter of fact, while we were up on the top, two people finished their Appalachian Trail hike. That is, they had started in Georgia and hiked the whole thing, which was really kind of neat. When we got ready to leave, our intent was not to go back down the way we came, but rather to descend on what is called the Knife Edge Trail. And this is what it looks like. All this kind of rock and boulders sitting up. But if you notice, even in this particular picture, you notice that it seems to drop off pretty quickly. And this is the point at which I should share with you that I am bothered by heights. Something that surprises most people. Most people that are, sort of uneasy at heights don't get near mountains. That's not the sort of thing we would do. But for the most part, I can generally keep it under control. But as we started out on this kind of rocky, path, if you will, I really started to, just politely get scared. Because it was, I was told later, 1,600 feet to the left and 1,600 feet down to the right. And it just looked to me in that moment like if I made a mistake, I was going to go 1,600 feet one way or the other. So unlike most of the people that were just kind of walking out on this thing kind of carefully, I was pretty much down on my hands and knees and making sure that I was always had like three things attached. That is 2 feet and a hand, or 2 hands and a foot, I should say. And I'm working my way slowly across there. Brian's ahead of me and gets somewhat far ahead, realizes something's not right, and turns and says to me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." I had learned the year before, that honesty matters in these situations. And so it was important that I tell Brian exactly what was going on. And I pointed out to him that I just feel like I'm going to fall. And we just talk for several minutes, actually. And as we talk, something that always happens to me in those situations, as I get comfortable, you're just acclimated, might be the better word. As I get acclimated to where I am, I start to realize maybe things aren't quite as bad as I think they are. And indeed, as I looked at like where I was at that moment, I realized that if I actually had fallen, I really wasn't going to go falling 1,600 feet. I was actually going to fall like 6 or 8 feet. There was plenty of ways to stop a fall before, going off into space. And so Brian at this point offers to go back. He says, "You want to just turn around? We'll go down the way we came." And I knew it mattered to Brian. I knew he wanted to do the Knife Edge Trail, and I did too. And also, if you'll take another look at this picture, I thought the Knife Edge Trail ended straight ahead on that photograph. And when I said that to Brian, I said, no, actually, I think I'm okay. I think I can get just, across there. It's not that far. And Brian at that point said, well, that's not where the trail ends. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the trail ends over there. And he points across this big curve, and you can see the ridge line of Katahdin, this knife edge trail moving all the way around. Turns out it's 1.2 miles. And as I keep talking, I'll show you some different pictures that I was able to find. It'll just give you a little bit of perspective of what this thing looked like. The last couple pictures are going to be reverse angles. You can just see it from the end of the trail looking back to where we were. The point here is at that point, I looked at Brian and I was like, you have got to be kidding. Like, there is no way. I mean, I'm barely surviving where I am, and you really think we're going to get over there? And again, Brian offered to turn around. He appreciated that I was really, really struggling at this point. But again, the longer we talked, the more, I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm all right. And so he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, all right, now let's go. Let's keep going. We'll be all right. And so we started off. And I did tell Brian he needed to go slower, because it was about the only thing that was going to help was if I did not stand up, if I kept going. Interesting enough, as it turned out, as I would have expected, the longer we were there, the more comfortable I got. But what really changed things, which was an exceptionally fortuitous moment, was, I don't know, it was maybe 15, 20 minutes later, we caught up to a guy and his girlfriend who were also going the same direction we were along the trail. He was struggling and she was really freaked out. And we had just started to get to the point where instead of this being nice and straight, this thing now was starting to go up and down. So we were sort of working our way, climbing up these little bit of chimneys and then back down and back up, all again with lots of air on either side. And Brian got up to them, caught up to them, and there really wasn't no place to pass at that point. And so Brian just slowed down and started to talk to them. Well, this turned out to be a wonderful gift to them, because Brian's just chatting, hi, where are you from? What are you doing? That sort of stuff. And as they talk, it's clearly getting their mind off of what's going on and doing the same for me, because I'm close enough I can hear this conversation. And so I'm intrigued by what Brian's doing. And I then, since he slowed down, I caught up to them. And so the four of us worked along together and just kept talking, and everybody, all four of us, just seemed to relax a little bit. And when we got to a point where it was safe for Brian and I to pass, they offered to let us go, and we did. And I really felt like what Brian had done in that moment with them, in that little time spirit, really helped them a great deal. I joked with Brian, he might have saved their dating relationship, because I could picture, if nothing had happened any better, that she was going to tell this guy, that's the last time we're doing anything together. And so Brian and I continued on, and to give you an idea about how comfortable I was at that point, we get to the end, and there is a place where you can get off the knife edge trail and then just, hike down the mountain, something that was not going to be particularly difficult. But before, just after this opportunity to get off the trail, you could finish the knife edge trail, which required a pretty vertical climb up onto a chimney, where you could stand up there and look back over the whole knife edge trail and then go back down and get off. Brian's started up, and I'm like, wait, This is our chance. Let's get off this thing. And Brian's like, nah, you got to finish it. Let's go. And we did. And standing on top of that chimney up there, that also wasn't my best moment, but having done all the rest, it was great. It was just really great to stand up there and realize what I'd managed to do. So what are the lessons? What's the lesson or lessons from all of this? Well, let me suggest 3. First is just a reminder, something that I already knew on this day, but certainly maybe a reminder to you, and that is honesty matters. If I had not said anything to Brian, if Brian had said, how are you doing? And I'd said, oh, I'm doing okay. What might have happened is Brian would have kept going. The speed he was going, I would have felt the need to go, try to keep up. I would have perhaps made a mistake, or probably more likely just would have gotten angry. I don't believe he's making me do this, that sort of thing, and just sort of build up some internal pressure, which at some point might have resulted in my yelling and screaming at the guy. And so telling him that I was not okay in that moment, I think, was very important. The second thing is, it was a good lesson to me, a bit of a reminder to me that a lot of my fear is not as bad as it at first seems. I really was pretty freaked. We got, just 20 yards out onto the knife edge trail. But as I talked to Brian and just could calm down a little bit and could honestly assess what was going on, I realized, it's scary, but it's not as scary. And I certainly found that to be true in so many areas, especially in ministry. You get an emergency call and you go and you don't know a lot of information, and there's a tendency perhaps to blow it up in your head. Oh, this is going to be awful. How's this going to work out? Or maybe an awkward, difficult conversation in a parish situation. And what I found is that, those conversations might be awkward. The visit to the hospital room might be difficult, but it's never as difficult as it first appears to me. And so another good lesson for me was sort of the old adage of just take some deep breaths and just, sort of get a real assessment of what might be going on, and then deal with reality, I guess, not with what you've hyped up in your mind. And the third lesson has to do with that couple we ran into. It just reminds me that helping others helps us. And so Brian did the bulk of this, of course, but after I caught up to them and could engage in the conversation, I just found that talking to them, I was just scrambling along as if I belonged up there and there was no issue whatsoever. There were 2 instances. I mentioned one in a previous video where we had an opportunity to help somebody else, and in both cases, it helped me. And is that not true of our lives in general? Those moments where we have the opportunity to be of help to somebody else, it does in some way so often help us. So that is my story of Mount Katahdin, probably the moment when I was most scared in all that hiking and climbing we did. Like so many of the other stories, taught me a great deal, and I hope by sharing it with you, it taught you something as well. If you liked the video, if you thought it was helpful, please give it that thumbs up. That seems to be important to Google and their search engines, and certainly feel free to share it with others. A quick note, we didn't take any pictures of our own on Katahdin, and so I benefited by gaining the pictures from other places. The photo credits are in the description below, and I want to honor those who just freely shared them, and certainly Stavros, who asked me to get permission, but was so very gracious to give it to me. And I included his contact information below because I think he makes his living doing hiking and climbing. So if you ever need someone's services, he seems like a great guy. All right. Well, thanks very much for watching the video. May God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.